Am I the asshole? For embarrassing someone by pretending to be Japanese? Backstory: F20 have a Japanese name even though I am not ethnically Japanese. My mum is Korean, my dad is British. They met and fell in love while studying in Japan, and had me there after marrying. We lived there until I was 14 before moving to the States. This will be important later on. Today a group of my roommate's friends came over to study with her, and I happened to be in the living room when they arrived. They were introducing themselves to me, and when I said my name, I have a pretty common Japanese girl name, so it's pretty hard to be mistaken about the origin, and one of the girls made a disgusted face and laughed at me, saying that was so dumb. She said that she was Japanese American and I was culturally appropriating her country as a white person. I tried to explain that I lived in Japan for a while and that was why, but she kept insisting I was lying and that if I was telling the truth I would be able to speak the language. Since she put it like that, I started talking to her in Japanese, basically explaining where I lived there and asking which prefecture her parents were from, etc. She ends up stuttering through a sentence in an awkward manner before leaving in a huff. Later my roommate told me I embarrassed her by pretending to be more Japanese than an actual Japanese person and appropriating the culture, and her friend expected an apology. My roommate doesn't think I did anything wrong, but now I feel like I've bad. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. As a white person, if your mother is Korean, you're biracial. Hit back by telling everyone you're expecting an apology from her for disrespecting your biracial identity and minimizing the discrimination that people of Korean blood experience in Japan. If she wants to play social justice poker, show her you've got a full house, and make her pay up. Not the asshole. The Japanese American guest was out of line, making rude comments about your name, and accusing you of lying when you told her you'd grown up there. You weren't pretending anything. You have a Japanese name because that's the name your parents chose for you, and you speak the language because you grew up there. You did not embarrass her in any way. She embarrassed herself. She made an incorrect assumption even after you explained your history and background. You should be expecting the apology. I am confused about what they thought you were appropriating. Your parents gave you your name, and it's not cultural appropriation to speak a language, especially after she asked you to. Seems like they wanted you to introduce yourself as Ashley, erase the first 14 years of your life, pretend you didn't know Japanese and defeatedly sigh, "You got me." Not the asshole. She said that she was Japanese American and I was culturally appropriating her country as a white person. People from East Asia generally do not waste time obsessing about PC crap like cultural appropriation. That's more of a second-generation immigrant thing in Western countries, specifically, the US. Not the asshole. Their friend was the one who was rude, condescending, racist and a bore. You put her in her place. You deserve an apology for her. Don't you dare apologize, as you were totally in the right here. Natasha's mad because she looked dumb and made an assumption about you without knowing the facts. Unfortunately, I have found that many of my Asian friends that were born in America struggle with their cultural identity. Many have a lot of guilt about struggling with their language skills or cultural knowledge. But none of that is your responsibility or problem. You taught her a very valuable lesson. Not the asshole. You didn't choose your name, and you were literally born in Japan. That makes you Japanese. You're not just pretending to be. Edit: I learned today that Japan doesn't grant citizenship by birth, if we're being technical. Thanks for the info. But being born in Japan, growing up there and spending most of her life there is enough to make me think it's still part of her identity, and it sounds like OP feels that way as well. Not the asshole. She doesn't know the story nor history of your family. What gives her or her friend, supposedly, the audacity to expect an apology? Not the asshole. Grew up in the Japanese culture. Culturally, if not racially, she is Japanese. Not the asshole. Your name has literally no impact on anything significant outside of your own personal life. I don't believe in the ownership of names, just like I don't believe in the ownership of clothes or hairstyles. That kid is an asshole and is just virtue signaling. Your roommate is an asshole too. Not the asshole. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You aren't pretending to be anything. Not the asshole, this person fucked around and found out. Not the asshole. It's your name. It's not like our impersonating a Japanese person. My name is from a country I've never visited, but that's what my parents named me. Not the asshole. She's embarrassed because she called you out and you speak better Japanese than she does. She's the one who owes you an apology for trying to shame you for something beyond your control, your name, and then not being supportive when you backed it up by speaking the language. Not the asshole. You literally did nothing but say your own name. She never gave you an opportunity to provide any context, not that you should have to try to prove you were lying by saying you ought to be able to speak Japanese, then left in a huff when you could indeed speak it. I cannot see a single thing here that you could reasonably be expected to have done differently in this scenario. Not the asshole. This friend is racist and ignorant. Not the asshole. She started it, you ended it. Clear. Not the asshole. Replying in Japanese was a power move. Good for you. No, you're not the asshole, but your friend and the Japanese American girl definitely are. Don't know how she can consider herself an actual Japanese person if she can't even match your language skills. Seems like she's more American than anything. Not the asshole. As everyone is saying, born there, few up there. There's a vocal minority in the Nikkei population that have very little connection back home, and push this kind of ideology. It's the same people that protest and complain about kimono shows and shops outside of Japan, crying cultural appropriation as Japanese diaspora, and ignoring the fact that the Japanese kimono industry is fronting the shops in an effort to revitalize the industry. It's absolutely not worth listening to this. Ha ha ha, you called her out and owned it. Not the asshole. She came for you first, Skull. Don't apologize for anything. She tried embarrassing you in front of everyone for you just having your name. This isn't about citizenship. This is about culture. You grew up there, so therefore you have part of that culture in you. Japanese American Japanese. Fucking Americans need to get this into their thick skulls. Just because your ancestors had X nationality does not make you said nationality. Especially when they don't know shit about culture or the language. My DNA said I am from X nation. No, you are a stupid American STFU. Not the asshole. Not the asshole, clearly. How the fuck you gonna appropriate a culture you were born and raised in for 14 years? Jesus. I've met enough Japanese Americans with a chip on their shoulder about not learning the language as they were born and raised in the US, so I imagine her anger and resentment comes from a place of deep-seated personal embarrassment, shame surrounding their own inability to use the language. Obviously their inability isn't their fault. You don't choose what languages you grow up speaking. Her attitude stinks though. Not the asshole. You're not pretending to be a Japanese person. You're half Korean, born and raised in Japan with a Japanese name that you didn't choose to be given. However, this Japanese American woman probably experiences a weird sense of dislocation and is kind of standing with one foot in America and the other in an idea of Japan. She's not one thing nor the other. She was rude, but it I guess from a bit of an internal wound. Not the asshole. Ask her why she has Chinese ideograms in her name. She came at you really hot. Like, there is a much better way of responding to that situation. She didn't have to come in with accusations and not let you answer a question. She didn't have to make fun of you and accuse you of lying with no proof. 20 is pretty young, but she's still old enough that she should know better to behave like that and then throw a fit when she's proven wrong. Her immaturity is not your fault or your problem. You didn't do anything wrong. You told her, she chose not to listen, and she ended up getting embarrassed. Her feelings were a consequence of her own actions. Not the asshole.